Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Dan Wickline Show. I am your host, Andrew Lloyd Webber, and I want to sincerely apologize for the movie Cats. Had I known what would come of my little musical, I would have skipped the whole thing and just bought a dog. Yeah, Webber actually came out and said something to the effects of that. So I thought I had to do that. Okay, today we're going to talk about the season finale of Marvel's What If and see if they pay off all those odd little plot threads that were left hanging in what some folks thought was an anthology series. Ha ha, surprise. Not an anthology series. I said early on that I thought it was building to something, and I got a lot of ridicule. Lot of ridicule. Yes, JD, congratulations. You ran the right opening. You're getting it just like I'm getting Black Comic Universe. So we're getting there. All right. Now, before we jump into the what if stuff, let's do a spin around the news. And it turns out that it was Agatha all along. Now, Variety is reporting that there's a WandaVision spin-off series in the works for Disney Plus starring Kathryn Hahn as Agatha Harkness in what is being described as a dark comedy, which I'm not sure she could do anything but a dark comedy. I mean, I'm sure Kathryn Hahn can be, a very serious actress, but the way she played Agatha Harkness in WandaVision, I think it kind of needs to be a dark comedy. Now, the series would bring back Jack Schaefer, who was the head writer on WandaVision and will be the head writer here. And it's part of her overall deal she signed with them and 20th Century Television back in May. Now, Hahn, who is kind of busy right now with her schedule, she's going to be in Rian Johnson's Knives Out 2. And then over for Apple Plus, she's doing a series called The Shrink Next Door. And then she's also involved with a limited series for Showtime about iconic comedian Joan Rivers. Now, the last time we saw Agatha, she had just done the big climactic magic battle with Wanda and lost and was left in Westview believing she was actually Agnes, the fake character she was playing in the Westview world. So Wanda made her believe she was Agnes and back in the Okie Dokie character. And so there's no plot details for the series, but with the character being hundreds of years old, they could really explore points from her past or move the character forward in the modern day. I mean, Salem witch trials, we could go through any decade, any era. Or in the modern day, we know the Fantastic Four is going to be coming into the MCU. Maybe it has something to do with her becoming the babysitter for Franklin Richards. Wouldn't that be interesting? So, yeah, that's the news on that. With all the series being talked about, though, you got to start thinking between the talked about and the rumors. We got Echo, we got Loki season 2, we got She-Hulk and Miss Marvel and Moon Knight, and it sounds like we're going to get to a point where we're likely to have year-round MCU content. Like right now, What If ended. Hawkeye doesn't start till November 24th. So we've got this 6 weeks of dead time. Now, maybe they'll put like a Marvel Legends Hawkeye out beforehand, a week before, and maybe they'll do a behind the scenes of What If. I haven't heard yet, but maybe. But still, that's a lot of dead time. And there's no Star Wars filling it in either. At least when we had the dead time between Falcon and Winter Soldier and Loki, there was the Bad Batch started up. But no, we got a big chunk of dead time now. So, all right, let's take a look. Cats, the first musical written entirely by cocaine. No, it's not. No, trust me. There's a lot of musicals that were written completely by cocaine. Have you seen 1776? Mr. Butler, how are you, sir? I am doing well myself, and we are just rolling through the news before we get to What If. All right, let's move on to some interesting news that came out. Spyglass Media and Hulu have made official the upcoming cast of David Bruckner's reboot of Hellraiser. Now, really interesting here is they're going to do a gender swap on Pinhead. And they're bringing actress Jamie Clayton in from Sense8 to be Pinhead, a role originally played by Doug Bradley. And Clive Barker is joining the production, which has already wrapped, but he's coming on as a producer, which is kind of weird that the production's already done, but he's coming on. Or maybe they're just announcing it now, but he's already been involved. They also confirmed that Grand Amy actress Odessa Azone will star in the movie, along with Brian Flynn from 13 Reasons Why, Goran Visinjic from ER, Drew Starkey from Outer Banks, Adam Faison from Everything's Gonna Be Okay, Aoife Hines from Normal People, Selena Lowe from Boss Level, which is a really good movie on Hulu if you haven't seen it. Boss Level is a lot of fun. And Hayam Abbas from Succession. JD, about that you on the board. Yeah, JD's on the board. All right, let's see. Where was I? Okay, so that's the news on that. Okay, I've got some news about What If, which is interesting. Because now that the series is over, the director, Brian Adams, is it really Brian Adams? Okay, and writer A.C. Bradley started talking about it, doing some interviews. So this is some of the stuff we got. Turns out there was a plan. I think I got the name wrong. But so there was a plan, at least that came along during production, of doing a spin-off series featuring Star-Lord T'Challa. Now, the writers were super excited by this idea, but they weren't sure yet if anybody had actually talked to Chadwick about it. But he was so enjoying playing this new version of the character, they were certain he would get involved. But nobody really knew how sick he was. He came in, they think about a month before he actually passed to record the final bits for the animated series. And even then, they didn't have an inkling. So they were moving forward with the idea when Chadwick passed. And so it's a tragedy, and because there was so much left for him to do, so much more amazing stuff he could have done. Also, if you've seen the episode, and I'm assuming you have because we're going to talk spoilers, there's a post-credit scene in the last episode, and the director says it's pretty safe we're going to get more Captain Carter in season 2, which they already started working on. So they've already started working on it. We had gotten word previously that Captain Carter was going to return in season 2, so this isn't really a big announcement, but this just about confirms it now. Writer A.C. Bradley talked about the difference between the twist endings that they always seem to do in the series and the post-credit scene. She said, for me, the difference between a twist ending that we're doing all season and a post-credit teaser is that the twist endings are for fun, but a post-credit teaser is a promise. So, all those episodes where we saw, there's Thanos, zombie Thanos with all but one stone missing. We may never get back to that. That's just a fun little twist. Stuff like that. Or, though we do get back to some of that in this new episode. The post-credit scene, which I will get in more detail later. I don't want to do it before the spoiler stuff, but that's a promise. That'll be paid off. Also, for anybody wondering about the fact that there's suddenly a new Tony Stark and a Gamora that we meet in the finale that we never met before, and Tony seems to be rounding around in a Hulkbuster armor that looks like it's built on Sakaar. Well, that's because it was built on Sakaar. we've talked about this before. There was a 10th episode in this season that got postponed. Now, it was described by Bradley as being a fun, lighthearted, living, breathing, Tony Stark-centric episode with Gamora. The problem is that one of the animation houses that they were using was hit extremely hard by COVID-19, causing the episode to be pushed into the next season. Now, let's take a moment here and think about that, though. The decision to push an episode instead of just moving it to another animation house, I mean, Disney's got all the money in the world. They could have found another animation house and just bumped it. But instead, Marvel and Disney said, no, we're going to stick with the original plan. Or they could have stuck with the original plan. But they're like, no, we're going to stick with the original animation house, let them keep this project and get back to it when they can for season 2, so that they don't lose the money because of COVID. I mean, that's kind of cool. You don't really hear stuff like that from businesses. Most businesses would be like, we're moving on. You can't do it? Fine. We're going to take it over to this company or that company. But instead, they let the company hang on to it. Now, also, it's kind of nice knowing that next season, we're going to get an episode where Tony Stark doesn't die. If this takes place after the episode, Tony lived. Oh, man. Now, on the big questions coming out of the episode is why exactly well, again, this is kind of spoilery, but they're talking about why the Watcher put the Natasha we have in that episode back into a different multiverse. Now, the reason he did, because everybody else went back to their own universe as well, according to Bradley, it came down to what they're saying about the Watcher himself. She says, he loves these characters. He loves these stories, these people, these heroes. He's invested in them. He would never banish her back to a planet to basically starve to death by herself. So they wanted to put her in a world where she could be the Natasha Romanoff that he had watched in different versions and loves, so that's where the idea came from. So that's why the difference, and and like I said, we'll get more in depth into that conversation in just a few minutes. But also, by the way, before we go any further, Sean, JD, anybody else who's here, throw your thoughts up on the series, on the season. Because that's the interesting thing is, I think the season finale changed my thoughts on the season itself quite a bit. So I want to see what you guys think. All right. And speaking of post-credit scenes, before we get into that, director Andy Serkis recently said about the teaser at the end of Venom Let There Be Carnage, quoting, "We wanted to leave the audience knowing that these universes are going to somehow collide, and we wanted to do it in such a way that it still leaves so much open. And we're not timing anything. The portal is not about being crossed fully. It's opening up more questions, I suppose, rather than sort of firmly saying anything. It's a tease. It's a tease in the fullest sense of the word." Now, AC Bradley just told us, post-credit scene's a promise. Andy Serkis is going, it's a tease. Which I guess is still kind of promise. I don't know. But we're going to get Venom and Spider-Man in the same place at the same time at some point. And the door is just open to that now. It'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. But it's true. We don't have a definitive, this is happening, that's happening. We've got potentials. So, okay, Mr. Butler says, I personally thought the season was great. Me being newer into comics, it gives me a new view on the characters and even has me trying to create my own what-if stories. Oh, I like that. I didn't realize you were new into comics, but that's very cool. So have you come up with anything? Because there's a lot of what-if stories out there. They did a lot. Then some of them were just really bizarre. And then some were awesome. But most of the ones in the comics all relate to the comic stories. If you're focusing on the MCU, that could be a lot of fun too. You know, my first one would be, what if Obadiah Stane was part of Hydra? Because that's the only thing that makes sense to me. That Obadiah Stane would try to kill Tony Stark, who was making all the weapons for him. Because it doesn't make sense that he would do that before. Well, 6 years is a little less than new, but yeah. Since I've been reading since 1975, you're a little newer than me. Yeah. Only 40 years. I only got 40 years on you. All right. Let's go ahead and get into Marvel's What If. And Mr. JD, can we get the spoiler thing? All right. Now, I feel bad because JD has not had a chance to watch the episode yet. So this is absolutely going to spoil it for him. But, oh, Sean's got, I have a what if Sabretooth was the Wolverine project instead of Logan? So what if Sabretooth was that Weapon X? I like it. That could be a lot of fun. Because Sabretooth is a very, very different character with a very different moral set. That's one to think about. All right, rolling into it here. The episode, it's really a two-parter. I mean, JD says the whole season to me was rushed. All the stories were trying to pack an hour show into half an hour. Okay, I could see that, but I think you might feel a tad different after the finale, because a lot of the loose threads that were left, just about everything is revisited. All the episodes are revisited in a way. So, and I'll get to that specifically, but we were really picking up off of last episode. That was truly a two-parter, in the sense that we got that. The penultimate episode was the darkness before the dawn type of thing, where we had Ultron wiping out universe after universe, finding out the Watcher's there, punching him through all this stuff, and the Watcher finally taking, safe haven in Strange Supreme's little safety bubble containment thing. I don't have a good term for that, but so we knew going in that, because they've been hyping it like crazy, we were going to get the Guardians of the Multiverse, and we knew kind of which characters were going to be in it, stuff like that. So it wasn't a big surprise. What was cool was the writing was a lot of fun. And for what could have been a very dark episode, it was actually kind of fun, And they dealt with a lot of things that kind of, like I said, they kind of wrapped up things. The Watcher gets Stephen's help, and we start with an opening that is pretty much Captain America the Winter Soldier's opening as he's going on the Lemurian Star. Captain Carter's uniform is even changed. They take the red off, but they leave the red on the shield, and that's kind of weird because when Captain America was in the stealth uniform, they took the red off the shield too. So I wonder why they didn't do it on this particular case, but they, and Frank Grillo's character is there of Crossbones. Yeah. I'll think of that in a minute. But Crossbones is there and the rest of the team. But instead of Crossbones going over the mission, it's Captain Carter. She's giving out the orders, and Natasha is there. And they do that whole thing where Natasha starts trying to get Cap a date. Brock Rumlow, thank you. So she's trying to get Cap a date, this being Captain Carter. And instead of it being Lillian accounting, it's Bernard in accounting, which is kind of a funny nod to the fact that we've got Jeffrey Wright in the series. Because if you watch Westworld, Jeffrey Wright's character's name is Bernard. And that's not a super common name. So, I mean, but yeah, I have a feeling they pulled that one as a nod to Jeffrey. Now, she, of course, responded by saying nothing good has ever been followed by the sentence Bernard in accounting, which I loved. But they have a little better rapport, like a little closer, more personal rapport in the beginning. And then she jumps out the plane without the parachute. They didn't bother to do the line about, did he not have or she not have a parachute? They skip that. They skip a lot of the thing and they go right into the Batroc the Leaper fight scene. And I believe they actually brought in George St. Pierre to voice himself, which is hilarious in a lot of ways because he's, it wasn't that many lines. Let me double check that real quick. The episode itself was called What If the Watcher Broke His Oath? So that should have told you, yes, George St. Pierre came back to do the voice of Batroc. And he doesn't have that he doesn't have that much lines in any of the stuff he's been in, but I thought that was hilarious. So he comes back and they fight, and he does the whole thing of, I thought you were more than the shield. And she goes, yes, but I'm a pretty good dancer too. And they fight. And then suddenly the Watcher is standing above them and saying, Captain Carter, warrior out of time, you have been chosen. And he then goes to the different multiverses we've met. He goes there. He goes to... we then go to the Dairy Queen, where Ego is pulling the energy out of Peter Quill, and suddenly Star-Lord T'Challa flies in, grabs Peter, and leaves a bomb on Ego's chest. And then as he's gets Peter outside, he goes, "It's very important you stay." I'm never going to be able to do that accent. It's very important you stay here. And Peter just goes, "Yeah, I'll stay out here with the giant baby guy in the cape." And of course, T'Challa looks around, and there is the Watcher going, "Star-Lord T'Challa, you have been chosen." And then he goes and he gets Killmonger, who is about to be overrun by the U.S. Army and Pepper Potts and Shuri and the Dora Milaje. So things are not going well for Killmonger when he gets pulled out of there. And then they go and they get Party Thor. And that's one of the funniest things because he's fighting all these Ultrons in Las Vegas. And he's very upset because this is screwing up his date. He was going to buy Jane flowers. He was going to take a shower. And he had all these plans, and they're being ruined. And then the Watcher's trying to get his attention, and he's not listening. And finally, the Watcher just grabs him like King Kong grabbing Fay Ray and pulls him up. And he immediately starts to scream, a la as he did in Ragnarok. And then suddenly they're all inside the pub from Captain America, the First Avenger. And Doctor Strange is behind the counter, behind the bar. And as they're trying to explain this stuff, Thor is, of course, like, "Can I get a beer?" Beer comes up there. So now Doctor Strange is a bartender. But, and they get the whole explanation. And they do kind of a Doctor Who thing where Thor goes, "Yeah, this is really nice and all, but I'm leaving." And he walks out the door and he's suddenly in the vastness of space and pulls himself back in. And that's something that the Doctor Who has pulled off a few times, which is always fun. So you've got all that going on. And we get the explanation of the Infinity Stones from Doctor Strange, and it kind of mirrors the way Wong explained it in Doctor Strange's movie. So And then they come up with this plan. Oh, I forgot. There's also, he shows up in, I'm never going to get the name right, but where Peter Dinklage is a giant dwarf. Nettleflime. Yeah. We're going to go with Nettleflime. The place where they crafted Stormbreaker. Well, they're there to melt down the Infinity Gauntlet, and it's Gamora wearing, looks like Thanos' armor and carrying his big double-bladed axe thing. And a Tony Stark who's all built up like a Hulkbuster uniform, but it's all in like Nidavellir. That's actually not that much different than what I said. Nidavellir. He's talking about using the stones because he wants to make a suit of armor around the galaxy. It's like he doesn't learn. But the Watcher shows up and wants to take Gamora, and Stark threatens him, and he just turns and goes, "No, not you, Stark. You, Gamora, slayer of Thanos and survivor of Sakaar, you have been chosen." And that's the one that was the episode we didn't get. So that's how those two are introduced. You almost don't need the episode because they kind of give you enough in that short little scene that you get it, You get that she's a badass and she killed Thanos and she's got his gear now and they're getting rid of the Infinity Stones. So when they're in the little pub and they're all putting the plan together, she pulls out this device that was built to atomize the Infinity Stones. It uses the Soul Stone to break apart all the other stones. It's kind of fascinating. And it had to be something Tony Stark built because it doesn't seem like something, since it's a Stark-centric episode. But, all right, so we've got them all in the pub. And then we'll pick up there after the commercial. But first, let me remind you guys, or tell you guys, that after today's show at 3 o'clock Pacific, everything's Pacific to me because I'm in LA, we got a Talking Shop episode. It's a rewind with Miss Jen. And she interviews two groups here. We got a married couple, Jenna Lynn Wright and Carl Staminski, about their scout comic Cult of Icarus. And then we've got the new writer of the upcoming Jennifer Blood series, which I believe came out yesterday, Jennifer Blood #1, Fred Van Lente. So, yeah, now Facebook was down when it first aired, so you might have missed this. So yes, it's a rewind, but this was aired during Facebook's downtime. So if you might have missed it, so definitely tune in for that. Plus, you want to hear what Fred's doing with Jennifer Blood. I've read the first issue. It's very cool. At 4 p.m., we're going to do What's in the Box? Yeah, that's my Brad Pitt imitation. It's not good. And then at 6, we're going to do Miss Jen and Bean are reviewing this week's new books from Tuesday. So we're doing a minute to skim it, I guess it is. I'm guessing. Okay. So, but that's it. That's after this show. Don't go anywhere. We're going to do some quick commercials. We're going to come back, and then we'll talk about the rest of What If. So be right back.
Today's comics market is ripe with new titles by creators who are determined to get their books into your hands. My name is Henri Compen. For the last decade, I've been making and selling my own creator-owned comics and dealing as a collector in live sales. My signature series, Yi Sun-shin is the book that cannot be defeated in battle and has over 250,000 copies in print. Now I'm taking comics to the next level and laying the groundwork for my fellow creators to get their voices heard so they can connect directly with you. This is your chance to engage live with top comic book talent and get your comics signed without having to wait in long lines or pay any fees. But remember, we only have a limited amount of their books in stock, so always remember to call it as you see it.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dan Wickline Show. Today we are talking about Marvel's What If, the series finale, or season finale, since there will be a second season. So let's go ahead and re-roll the spoiler thing just in case anybody's new. Like I see. All right, so we were just talking about the fact that they got all collected together in the pub from Captain America, the First Avenger, and they come up with a plan, and then they go to this desolate planet where there's like no life form, so Ultron won't be attracted there. And they have a moment to collect themselves and figure out and discuss the plan and all of that. And Doctor Strange brings out drinks, and they have a little toast. And of course, Party Thor launches lightning bolts into the sky in celebration, and immediately Ultron goes, "What's this?" And draws their attention right away. So then it becomes a battle, and Party Thor immediately throws the plan out the window, and it tries to attack him with the amazing battle cry of "Viva Las Vegas," which even Ultron goes, "I'm not familiar with that battle cry." So I actually like that part quite a bit. Doctor Strange was pretty cool in this. He gave everybody that protection spell. Remember that protection spell that Wong put on him in that episode? Well, he put it on everybody, and it helped a lot. And we were getting a good idea of just how strong Doctor Strange really has become at that point, or Strange Supreme, if you want to go with that title. But they've got this interesting plan. Thor throws his hammer, and then the Doc creates mirror images, but they're all actually physical, so they're just like pummeling Ultron. And this whole plan is in part to get T'Challa close enough to steal the Soul Stone off of Ultron's chest. And I don't know about you, but if I was building a suit of armor with these magic stones in them, or these powerful stones in them, I don't think I would make them where you can just plop them out. I think I would put like a protective cover over it or something. I don't want to just, no, that just seems like a bad idea to me. The vision, it was there, but it was real hard to pull out. No, T'Challa just went, got it. So, and then they, one of my favorite moves is to distract Ultron. Strange opens a portal and dumps zombies on top of him. Just this deluge of zombies come crashing down on him. And then they escape back to the original world where Ultron came from. This leaving him to face off with zombie Scarlet Witch, which awesome moment, but very short. And he defeats her by blowing up the entire planet, maybe the entire universe. Don't know. But it was pretty powerful. He then follows them to the next one, but there, Star-Lord goes to toss the stone to Gamora, and suddenly dystopian Natasha comes flying by on her bike and grabs the stone. Now, my only problem with that is motorcycles aren't quiet. Somebody should have heard it coming. Just saying. Somebody should have heard that motorcycle coming long before she got in there close enough to grab the stone when it was tossed. But Captain Carter makes friends with her by telling her what all stealth spy cycle. Okay. Sure. Why not? What if Natasha had a stealth spy cycle? All right. Then we get Captain Carter making friends with this Natasha by telling her all the things she knows about the other Natasha and the fact that her father's name was Ivan, but her dad was Alexei, who's, of course, Red Guardian. And it's a pretty interesting scene. And she says that I'm one of 3 people that you consider you're the only person I trust with my 6. But by the time they get that all figured out, Ultron pops up and starts causing havoc. And you get this fight scene that's pretty cool. And their original plan to use the Stone Cruncher, or whatever you want to call it, the Infinity Stone Cruncher, fails because the stones are different in every universe. Now, in the comics, stones don't work in different universes. You have to be in the origin universe of the stones for it to work. So the movies obviously aren't doing that, or at least here in What If, they don't work in the TVA, which makes me wonder why they didn't just take that Ultron to the TVA. The Watchers should have known about the TVA, right? Why didn't they just go to the TVA and beat him up there? Just a thought. Because even his Mind Stone shouldn't have worked, so he probably would have shut down. Since a Mind Stone was what was kind of fueling him. So, just thought about that. That's it. That would be kind of interesting. Anyway, so the Crusher didn't work because the Mind Stones were different than the ones that it was built for. So they have to come up with this plan B, and the plan B is Hawkeye's arrow with Arnim Zola downloaded on it from last episode. And Captain Carter and Natasha have to work together, and they fire the shot. She says, "This is for Clint," as she fires it, and he shoots him. She shoots him in the eye. Little Red Rider, going to put an eye out with it, like thing. And then we end up with this standoff between Ultron and Arnim Zola, which is pretty cool, because you're not sure who you want to root for at that time, because they're both evil dickheads, right? So they fight, and Arnim Zola ends up taking over. And through this whole thing, you've been kind of keeping your eye on Killmonger because he's been playing with an Ultron head and kind of figures it out with the nanotech. And he ends up making the armor that Ultron had around him form on Killmonger with the stones. And he basically takes the stones. And you get the feeling that the Watcher kind of felt this was going to happen, because you don't see it as it goes along, but it seems like he had this overall plan, and it's why he picked this specific team. And Killmonger betraying everybody or going for the stones was part of the plan, because then you've got Arnim Zola and Killmonger fighting over the stones, and as they get separated from them and they're kind of pulling towards each other, Strange Supreme realizes what's going on, creates the sphere like he did to save himself when his universe was collapsing. He creates that sphere around them and traps them in it. So forever and ever, amen, they're going to keep fighting over the stones, but as long as the thing doesn't crack, they'll be in there. So, but he realizes at that moment that they weren't there to stop Ultron. They were simply there to separate the stones from him so he could do that. And this was all the Watcher's plan. And Killmonger was there as part of that, because I guess he realized that if they were going to use Arnim Zola would then take the stones. Been just as bad situation. So you needed to have that counteraction for Zola, and that's what Killmonger was. So what I liked about the episode, it was fun. Seeing them all fight together. There's a scene where Dystopian Natasha and Captain Carter are just pummeling Ultron back and forth with the shields. You know, you get Alexi's shield and Cap's shield. Back and forth. Boom, boom, boom. We see a lot of the creature. At one point, he's letting some of the creatures out. Strange is letting some of the creatures out to fight Ultron. He lets out a 3-headed dragon, and Thor's like, "Why didn't you do that before?" He lets the tentacled creature come out. Maybe it's Shumagorath. I don't know. But you've got all the stuff that Strange did in his episode plays a major key in the way this gets resolved. Killmonger is a major key in how this is resolved, and we see the way he double crosses. He's a thinker and all this other stuff. So his episode suddenly becomes very important to how all this works. T'Challa does sticky fingers to steal the gem and is involved in all this stuff. So his episode is very important. Captain Carter is kind of the basis for this, or the backbone, and so her episode's very important. The dystopian future where Ultron was created, Natasha becomes very important. So they make all those episodes mean a lot, but they also do. They bring in, even the zombies become important because they needed to slow down Ultron, so they used the zombies. So the only episode that doesn't get connected to the main story at that point is the what if the Avengers died, or what if Hank Pym was a murdering bastard. But it does come up at the end, which is interesting, because then it comes time to send everybody home. Party Thor goes back and has his date with Jane. T'Challa Star-Lord goes back, and we see him fighting side by side with Peter Quill against Ego. So that was really cool, because then you're like, okay, maybe Peter Quill isn't just going to be left behind to rot in Ohio. That's a nice tie-up of that story. Gamora gets sent back to Tony. We'll probably figure out what all that was about next season. Captain Carter wants to go back to where Steve was, and the Watcher says, no, you need to go back to the time you came from. They need you there. Well, when she goes back, and this is kind of the post-credit scene, is the fight with Batrock is like right then, and she gets hit, and Natasha takes him out. Well, it turns out Natasha has found what Hydra was looking for, takes Carter there, and is like, you're not going to believe this. And she's like, after what I've just seen, nothing's going to surprise me. And they look through this little window in this container, and it's the Hydra Stomper. And Natasha goes, and there's somebody in it. And you start hearing, played like single note slow piano, the theme from First Avenger. So you're like, oh, Steve's in there. Now, that could mean a lot of things. Steve might have been in, this might have been something that a cryo sleep that Howard Stark put him in. He might have gotten captured and is kind of their version of the Winter Soldier, but with the suit. There's a lot of possibilities there. But according to A.C. Bradley, that's going to get paid off next season. So it's an important post-credit scene to watch. But then Natasha, the dystopian Natasha, starts going off on the Watcher for not getting involved earlier. stuff like that. Like, why, you let my entire planet die. I'm the only one left. Well, he doesn't take her back to that planet. And as I said earlier, he couldn't let her go back to that planet and just starve and die on her own because he cares about these characters. He didn't want to put them back in bad situations. So instead, he takes her to the helicarrier where Nick Fury, Captain America, and Captain Marvel are fighting Loki from the Hank Pym episode. A universe where they lost their Natasha. So he's dropping her in this world where Natasha's already dead to kind of fill in. And she takes out Loki, takes control of him with the Mind Stone. And Nick Fury's like, you're not my Natasha, but I think you've got her spirit. So it's like, okay. So now she's got this new home. She's got this new chance. And that felt very satisfying to me. They took care of Peter Quill, they took care of Natasha. These sad endings that we got, or these downer things, all seem to come around. Maybe Peggy and Steve are going to be able to be together. We'll find out. But everybody seemed to get a happy ending, including the world where Killmonger was, because Killmonger is now trapped in that little sphere with Arnim Zola in Vision's body. By the way, when Arnim Zola fully took over Vision's body, his face appeared in the chest like he was straight out of the comics. That was awesome. But then we see that Stephen Strange in his little, or Strange Supreme in his little shell is going to be back in his shell, holding this new little reality that he created to keep them trapped in it. And he's like, yes, I'm going to watch, because what are friends for? So that seems like a plot thread that might come back someday. Because the Infinity Stones are trapped in there, but then there's Infinity Stones elsewhere too. So I don't know. It just seems like that's kind of origin of the MCU McCran crystal. I don't get the reference. McCran crystal? Don't know that one, JD. But yeah, so it felt interesting to me that they really did kind of wrap up all of the different stories. We got some of these episodes felt very unsatisfying when we got to the end. But even just a little, it's a Marvel MacGuffin known as the Nexus of All Realities. Maybe. I thought the Nexus of All Realities is basically where the TVA is. I don't know. It's a good question. Let me do a little research into that. Yeah, let me do a little research into that. It may actually, that's a good question. But the fact that we saw what happened to Peter Quill, it just, I guess that's the one. And then we got to see Pepper Potts and Shuri and the Dora Milaje working together to bring down Killmonger. So that world is going to be balanced again. They don't have their Black Panther, but it's a new chance for them. And it seems like all of the realities that weren't destroyed have a new chance. So I like that. I like the fact that they actually leave you with hope. Even though Stephen Strange is trapped in the little crystal with holding another crystal, and that does seem like that could be a problem in the future, but everybody else got kind of what they wanted. Even with Peggy, maybe she gets Steve. Natasha gets a universe to a new start. Gamora went back to Tony. I don't know if there's something there. We're going to have to see that episode. But, Thor went to go back and be with Jane. I mean, everybody got a happy ending. And the Watcher then talks about how he's going to protect the universes. So he's not going to just be watching anymore. which really changes the series if you think about it. If the Watcher isn't just watching and keeping to his oath, will he start regularly getting involved? In which case, doesn't that change what the series is? I mean, I like the idea of him doing it on a special, because all the universes were going to get destroyed, and he's kind of at fault for keep monologuing while, you know, Ultron is discovering the rest of the universes. But it just seems like we should go back to him just watching, and the fact that he says he's going to be protecting really gives us the idea that season 2 might be different. You know, we can tell that we're going to get the Tony Stark Gamora episode, and we're going to have to do something with Captain Carter. We know that. So that's 2 of the 9 episodes right there. And I wonder if they're going to build to another Guardians of the Multiverse thing. You know, is that how it's going to end? Like how each phase of the first 3 all ended with a big Avengers movie. Will the last episode always be a Guardians of the Multiverse episode? Seems a bit rote, you know, like we don't need to have that same thing over and over again. But I think this episode really made me like the other episodes more. You know, that there was a reason for all of them, that there's, you know, we didn't just see them randomly. If there had been an episode like the Hank Pym one, really felt like until the ending that it was just a filler episode. The fact that we had that and we didn't get the Gamora Tony Stark one seemed strange to me. But then when we come back and we see, oh, this is the world he's going to put Natasha in because Natasha died here already. That really summed it up for me. That really tied everything together. And I think it needed that. I think it made the series feel different to me. It didn't feel like just a Crypt Keeper type thing where, you know, that's just the narrator. This is somebody who actually cares about all these worlds and wants things to come out well and doesn't want to see the bad thing. You know, he wants things to be good. And that's interesting because we always got him as being this very detached character that would never break his oath. And I mean, he did a couple times in the comics, but he never wanted to. He always wanted to be above it all. And I think it was Reed Richards' trial or something was the first time he really got involved. But here, he gets very humanized, you know. He loses that detachment. He gets involved. He has emotions. He gets frustrated. He blinks. That's the weirdest thing is when we start seeing the Watcher blink. Just makes him very human. And yeah, I think this was a really good end to the series because there were highs and lows all season long. But I think this really kind of connected all the dots. Now, there's still some outlying stories that we didn't get. You know, what happened to Thanos with the zombie Thanos with the stones and those characters, and why didn't he pull one of the characters out of there like Zombie Hunter Spider-Man or something like that? But the zombie deluge still tells you why we saw the zombie episode. So, yeah, overall, it really pulled it together nicely for me. I liked it. And I'm kind of looking forward to season 2 already. Now we got a bunch of stuff coming up. We got Hawkeye and Moon Knight and just a ton of stuff. We got the Eternals on the 5th of November. We got Spider-Man No Way Home. Just a ton of Marvel stuff coming out. But we'll get to all this stuff. Hopefully we'll start getting some dates and stuff. I know they're doing a Disney Plus Day in November. Maybe we'll get some dates for at least some of these shows. JD says, you'd think the zombie Thanos would have gone right after Ultron's scene as he still needed a Mind Stone. Yeah? But we don't even know if zombie Thanos was in that pile because Zombie Scarlet Witch wasn't in the same place, and she was part of the deluge of zombies that dropped. So he probably just opened it up from the zombies at Camp Lehigh. At least that's my thought. So probably Thanos wasn't even there. So that might be a story they need to finish up with too. You know, what happened to that. So, all right, guys, we are going to wrap it up. Please stick around. We got some great stuff coming up. We have the Talking Shop with Miss Jen Rewind from Monday that a lot of people didn't get to see because of the Facebook blackout. It's interviews with Jenna Lynn Wright and Carl Staminsky doing their Scout comic book Cult of Icarus. And then she's talking to Fred Van Lente, who's the writer on the new Jennifer Blood series for Dynamite. Followed by at 4 o'clock Pacific, 7 o'clock Eastern, sure. What's in the Box. And then at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, Miss Jen is back with Bean, and they're reviewing this week's new books in a replay of Minute Skimmit. So if you missed that, stick around for all of that. It's going to be a great night. I hope you guys have a good night and a good weekend. I will be back next week with whatever is in the news. See you guys. Have a great night.